Yeah, this isn't going away. See, I had some vain hope that persons who are interested in a particular subject that I discussed briefly, and in reply format no less, would find sufficient grounds to investigate maybe my clarifications on the subject, maybe, I don't know, a direct video reply to my own video that I might have made. Apparently that was unfounded optimism on my part. For those who aren't sufficiently invested, can't say I blame you. I'll give you the bullet points right here. The 10 questions that every intelligent Christian must ask video was disingenuous. Every one of the questions was leading, and leading in the same way and with the same sneering condescension that one expects from a serious diatribe on the flying spaghetti monster. I'm amazed that they made it through that video with that level of contempt without frequently referencing the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, and the Easter Bunny, because that is exactly the sort of very thinly veiled ad hominem that this sort of argumentation relies on. Frankly, I think I'm equivalently justified in ignoring those questions given their nature, given the nature of the argument, as you would be justified in ignoring my asking if it bothers you that your mother is a whore. Dressing up an antagonistic proposition with a few interrogative prepositions and a question mark at the end doesn't change the nature of the statement. Let's get one thing straight. The question of the existence or non-existence of God is of sufficient complexity that the language with which we discuss the question imposes a false clarity of terminology. It is a question of complexity greater than the framework of the language with which we could possibly express it. I would hope that the problem of discussing the existence or non-existence of God, the difficulties we encounter, would be evident just by taking a look at the way that descriptors function analogously. The descriptor exists, for example, functions via analogy. When I say that a thing exists, I am describing it as existing in a way that is functionally relatable to the way that something else exists. Descriptions, propositions, even imperatives, implied imperatives, inducted imperatives, akin to when I shout fire, they function this way. They function via analogy. They function via a very complicated relationship of analogy, metaphor, and presumed shared meaning. Even given this complexity, let's consider the structure of argument that's being gone after here. We'll ignore the snarky streak for a moment and just pretend that everyone is dealing on relatively earnest terms. A miracle occurs, so God exists. A miracle does not occur, so God does not exist. So let's strike the word miracle and say occurrence. I have observed an occurrence. I have interpreted this occurrence, and as such I understand with epistemic certainty and phenomenological certainty the way that this occurrence corresponds to the general context in which occurrences happen. Furthermore, I am able to relate this occurrence to the general rules by which occurrences happen, and from this I have been able to draw a direct, and again, epistemically and phenomenologically sound and absolute connection between this occurrence, the general context in which occurrences happen, and the structure of things both seen and unseen, occurrences known, occurrences unknown, and occurrences unknowable, and from this I can construct or affirm a system that describes a top-down order to the cosmos, and verify in its entirety the general commentaries that have been made over time regarding this top-down system and its correlation to human experience. You don't say. There's quite a few jumps there. Let's say that I am sitting in the room with a man whose lost limb spontaneously regrows. Does this mean that I necessarily can relate this occurrence to, again, the general structure of the universe? Can I say anything intelligible about how occurrences do and don't happen, and my general understanding of the rules wherein I can predict what will and will not occur, other than I have observed an exception? I have observed an occurrence for which I do not have an explanation, and which presents a challenge to the way in which I generally believe occurrences can be predicted. Does this occurrence carry with it an encoded message, absolute, and so absolute that it transcends the duplicity, the complexity, and the ambiguity of communication, that I can, from this occurrence, correctly and absolutely deduce the ultimate nature of the cosmos? That involves quite a few leaps along the way. But let's try it the other way around. Let me imagine that I am in the room with a person for whom a lost limb does not spontaneously regenerate. Does the observation of the absence of this occurrence... Hang on a minute. When did we get in the business of observing the things that do not occur? Alright, let's be really generous. We're going to ignore that the argument presented is predicated on the observation of the absence of an event. Let's do a little work for our buddies here and pretend that the original argument was actually predicated on the absence of observation of this event, which wasn't exactly true. You are at the very best, you're in the same position as the person who says that they saw some weird shit and from this have an absolute and detailed understanding of the binding principles of causality on which the universe operates. From either direction, event or absence of event, providing direct commentary on the existence or non-existence of God. And by the way, it's really cute that we bandy these terms about without spending much time deliberating what the hell we mean by the word existence in this context to begin with. Either way, we're describing the exception as providing a complete description of the system. If the exception occurs, we have an absolute description of the system as built around that exception, at which point the event is no longer exceptional. Even if we're being very specific and we're discussing the absence of a very specific exception, and once again we find ourselves describing via negative space with an implied knowledge of the content of negative space as providing significant conclusion and descriptor for what is known. Either way, we're saying that from a specific, discrete event, we can gain totality of knowledge. Not only do certain sorts of events contain encoded information, that there is some sort of absolute connection between an occurrence, knowledge of the occurrence, and knowledge of the context in which the occurrence occurred. We are also saying that these occurrences and the information that they contain completely bypass every facet of human consciousness. That this information operates in a way that is qualitatively different from any other information that exists within the human sphere of knowledge. And simultaneously, that it is uniquely tailored to function within the human sphere of knowledge. That not only is the universe capable of self-description with such a totality and with so little variety that a single event provides a total description, but that this universe is functionally oriented towards bypassing all of the ambiguities, all interpretation, and all of the complexities of communication that human thought entails. And at the same time, operating purely within the confines of terms described in human thought. Either way, this event is being presented as presenting a description that simultaneously defies all convention of the general structure of human knowledge and how knowledge operates in human terms, and discreetly operates within those rules.
If you want to be in the business of looking for miracles, that's a good one.